All right. Is it the right time to buy in Prescott, Arizona? I know the answer and I want to share it with you. This is your October 2025 real estate market update. Let's just go over the main facts about Prescott right now and what we saw in September. Number of sales was at 172, so that is up. Number of homes that hit the market was 173, which is actually down from where we were prior to that. Leaving one house in surplus. So that's good. That's a good sign. We're back to a balanced market. Inventory is currently at 744 homes for sale. That is going down. Even though we had one for surplus, I'll explain to you here in this market update why that's going down. Months of supply, we are at 6.2 months of supply, meaning that it is still a buyer's market here in Prescott, Arizona. Median sold price is $608,000. That's down 2.6% year over year. Pretty interesting stat there. Average discount is at 2.8%. Stick with me and I'll tell you what that translates to in dollars. And days on market is at 92. That's going up. We're up 24 days on market year over year. Great news for buyers, not so great news for sellers. So without further ado, let's get into this. All right, the first stat that we like to look at is homes sold. So let's just isolate this year. 2025, we are at 172 homes that sold in September. This was up. This is actually the highest point we've hit for the year. We're up from August. And a year over year, we're actually up as well. We're up 59 year over year, so 2024. So things are looking up in Prescott. You know, we started the year off pretty rough with 87 homes that sold, and we were at 172 in September. So what does that mean? It's just one piece of the puzzle. So let's put this puzzle together. Homes that were just listed or just hit the market in September of this year was at 173. So that's been a really low point. I mean, that was even lower than January. And for us, look at the history here. Look at this spaghetti graph. You've got December always drops off. You know, we've got holidays going on. Most people don't want to put their house on the market until the new year. So hence January. So we're at 176. January, February are typically down. We were significantly higher this year than we have been in years past. We spiked April, May, boom, 277 houses hit the market, and it has been a down slide since then. And September 173. And let's look at all the data. That is going to be on par with last year, 2024, which was at 173. And those are both tied for the lowest in the last, I got 7 years of data here, going all the way back to 2019. So again, another low September. If we look at 2024, let's isolate this year and last year. You can see we kind of had something similar going on, you know, March, April, May, spike, and then it just slid off from there. October of last year was pretty consistent, pretty steady with September. So I'm hoping we see the same thing this year for 25. You know, we're going to have kind of level off, but I don't know. Prediction, it's going to be probably somewhere between 174 where October was last year and the 150 mark. So not great news. If you're a buyer, that means less houses are coming on the market. And I'll hold that thought. Hold that thought for now. I don't want to give it away, but we'll talk about that in the upcoming slides. So let's talk about listed versus sold. So like I said earlier in the intro, we had one as a surplus month over month. I'm sorry, not month over month. Just listed versus, so what went on the market versus what sold. There was only one. It's about that much, right? So what does that mean? That means we're not in a surplus, but it also means that we're not in a shortage. We're pretty much almost to a balance right there of one for one, homes going up for sale and homes that closed escrow. But that's not the whole story, folks. We're going to move on to the next slide. Homes for sale. So homes for sale didn't increase from August, which is at 799, right? So with that theory, 799 plus 1 would be 800. No, we're at 744. So that means that we had let's do this math in our heads real quick. 57 homes came off the market not having a for sale sign in their front yard. What does that mean? That means that many people, 57 people, decided that they were done with this market. I'm not going to sell my house. Took the for sale sign out of their yard and either put a for rent sign in the yard instead, rented it out, or they decided, heck with it, I'm just going to stay here for another year or two. So homes are coming off the market. Inventory is going down. Sellers, I think, are finally getting to the point to where they're realizing the reality of the current market and that we're not in 22 and 23 anymore, and they don't dictate the price anymore. This is a market that has shifted into a buyer's market. So let's talk about that. But before we do, 744 homes on the market as of September, which is 60 more compared to last year. So that is a green flag. If you're out home shopping right now in Prescott, Arizona, great reason to buy. More inventory than we had last year. And the most inventory we've had in September in the last 2, 4, 6, 7 years. So that's for the pro section there, pros versus cons. So months of inventory, I started to talk about this. Let's actually talk about it now. We're talking about months of inventory, which translates into what kind of a market are we in. If you're below 4 months of supply, you're in a seller's market. If you're above 4 months to 6 months, you're in what's called a balanced market, which I don't want to say nothing's ever completely balanced, but whenever we're in this threshold here, we have to drill down into the data if you're a buyer or even if you're a seller to what's going on in the specific neighborhood that you want or that you're currently living in and you want to sell in. So an example of that is what's going on in, like, let's say Prescott Lakes, right? So if you're in a balanced market in general in Prescott, we still might be in a buyer's market in Prescott Lakes because there's so many houses on the market in there and a lot of them are overpriced. So if you have questions about any specific neighborhoods here in Prescott, please reach out to me. My contact information is listed below. Send me a message, phone call, or shoot me an email or carrier pigeon if you do that kind of thing. No one does carrier pigeons, but I don't know. Sounded right in my head. Anyways, let's dive back into the data here. So months of inventory, we are sitting at 6.2 months of supply as of September, which means that we are still technically in a buyer's market here in Prescott, Arizona. So it needs to fall back below the 6 months of supply to get into a balanced market. So what's that doing to our prices? Typically when you're in a buyer's market, that drives the prices down. That means that we're in a surplus. If you know basic economics, supply and demand, when you have more supply than you do demand, your price tends to drop. Or if it's vice versa, you got more demand than supply, then your price tends to increase. Hence why prices shot up like a rocket here in the red line, which is 2020, into 2021, and then even into 2022, seeing us peak out at 669,900 in May of 22 was the highest that we've hit here in Prescott so far. And that's going back 7 years of data. And I know we were not higher than that prior to 2019, so that's why I did not pull data from prior to that. So anyways, that's our benchmark on our high there. Perfect example of having a home shortage. Ever since then, we've been building inventory, as you saw in the last two charts. We're back up into a buyer's market now out of a seller's market. So what does that mean? That means prices have stayed pretty much flat. I feel like I have this conversation on a weekly basis with somebody talking about pricing, and they're like, oh, the prices are this or the prices are that. And it's like, yeah, on a month-to-month basis, any given month, you can be up or down on the price, right? So according to the data right now, we're down 2.6% year over year. But that doesn't mean we're on a steady trajectory down. Really, it's with the anomaly of the beginning of 23, February of 23 being a lull, and then March shooting back up. I mean, you can see all three of these lines, the white, the blue, and the dark blue, are staying relatively together. With last year being the flattest of the three. But this year, yeah, like I said, so we're up month over month. 608,500 is the median sales price as of September. which is a tick up from August, but it's also a couple ticks down from September of last year. Where are we going to go moving forward? Well, you can see last year we dropped off between September and October, but in 23 we had a huge spike from September to October. However, the data right there from September of 23 was an outlier, so I wouldn't take that into consideration. If you were going to put it more on a taking averages into consideration here, August, September, October, we trended down August to October. So I don't know. What do y'all think? Drop your comments. Let me know what you think is going to happen to the median sales price for October. Are we going to go up in sales price? Are we going to go down in sales price? Or are we going to stay relatively flat? My prediction is that we're going to go down from where we're at right now, just based on history and what I'm seeing here on this chart. Okay, sold to list percentage. I love looking at this chart specifically because it gives you as a buyer or a seller an idea of where offers are coming in right now, and maybe not coming in at, because they're going to come in lower than this, but where you can negotiate back up to and have a reasonable idea of a discount that you're either going to get or you're going to give off of the list price. So in September, the sold to list price percentage ratio was 97.2. If we do the math backwards and we take that out of 100%, that gives us a 2.8% difference, which means that's on average a 2.8% discount from the last list price or the on-market price to what it actually closes escrow for. So if you do 2.8 times the median sales price, that is a cool $17,000. So that's nothing, that's not like a couple grand. That's 17 grand. That's a car. Like, that's quite a bit. So it's very important that you're working with the right agent that knows this data and knows how to negotiate on your behalf as a buyer or even as a seller, right? Because there's people coming in that are asking for 5% off of list price. And if you don't have an agent representing you that knows the data as a seller, your agent could be telling you to go for that. Everybody's scenario is different, so make sure that you have a full consultation with your agent of choice before you get to the point of negotiations. But so critical to know this. Seriously, so critical. And so many people don't know this data. Next chart, days on market. Typically when we see inventory build, we see days on market build. However, we're seeing an inverse here. We're seeing inventories coming down, but the days on market is still going up. So this is cumulative days on market. We're at 92 right now, which is the highest September we've had since I went back in the data on 21 on this one. I didn't go back to 19, but I didn't feel like it was necessary. So yeah, 2025, 92, that's 24 more days on market compared to last year. And it's because there's so much more inventory on the market, right? And then also last year it was more of a balanced market where we're in a buyer's market now. Good news if you're a buyer, not so good news if you're a seller. My name is Brent Wofford. I am a local real estate professional here in Prescott, Arizona. I actually live in Prescott, Arizona, so I'm very familiar with the market, the neighborhoods, a lot of information about the area because I live here. So if you have any questions about it at all, please reach out to me. My contact information is listed below. Let's do a quick recap before I let you go on what happened and what we just went over. So just to recap Prescott real quick, number of sales is at 172. So that's up, good news. Number of homes listed is at 173 for last month, which is down, but it's still good news because that's a balanced market, right? Balanced equilibrium on a 1 month snapshot, which is good. Listed versus sold, like I said, being balanced, we were at +1 on the inventory for that number. However, inventory did go down because of sellers getting discouraged and pulling their homes off the market. But still, 744 homes to choose from in Prescott right now. So if you're a buyer considering this market, you have tons of options to choose from. And more options mean you're in a buyer's market, right? More options means more supply, which means more months of inventory, which translates to a buyer's market, and then that translates into a higher average discount that you can get on a house when negotiating. You have more negotiating power. Like I had said, 2.8% was the average discount last month, which times that by the median sold price of $608,000. gives you $17,000 average discount off of list price. So something to consider when you're out there home shopping right now. If you think your limit is, let's say it's $650, bump that search on up to $665, $670 and see what you can find in that price range. We might not be able to negotiate it down and get it closer to that $650 mark for you. Also, average days on market was 92, which is an increase year over year of 24. That's it. Thank you for sticking around this long. Like I said, if you have any questions at all, please reach out to me. My contact information is listed below. If you're still here, please give me a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss these market updates. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a rad rest of your day.